Welcome to the Bitcoin Source Podcast, everyone. Today we have an esteemed guest with us, Pete Rizzo, a veteran Bitcoin journalist and editor. With his extensive experience and in-depth knowledge of Bitcoin, Pete, I have been following you in your thesis regarding Satoshi, so we're in for a very enlightening discussion. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. Excited to get into it. Always happy to chat about Bitcoin. It's a bear market, so we got to get people energized. We got to get them building.
Most definitely. So Pete, the first question that I want to ask you is, as a Bitcoin journalist since 2013 or so, you've witnessed the evolution of the Bitcoin industry firsthand.
Hmm.
How have you been able to see Bitcoin's narrative and public perception change over the years, and what major milestones or events do you believe have shaped its journey?
Hey there, fellow Bitcoin enthusiasts. We just wanted to take a moment to appreciate you for tuning in to the Bitcoin Source, a Bitcoin conversation. Your support means the world to us as we dive into the exciting world of Bitcoin, blockchain, and all things cryptocurrency. If you've been enjoying our content, don't forget to hit that like button. It's like a virtual high five that keeps us motivated. And hey, sharing is caring. If you know someone who'd geek out over Bitcoin as much as we do, hit that share button. Finally, if you want to stay up to date with all our latest episodes and insights, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss a single update. Thanks for being a part of our community. Keep exploring, and remember, the future is decentralized. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, that's a great question. I always go back to the root question of the whole industry, which is, Bitcoin is an invention. It's something that was created by Satoshi Nakamoto that didn't exist before. We've never had a digital money that operated like Bitcoin did. Where it is true that you, the individual, kind of have power within the financial system. Yeah, in 10 years, the narrative around Bitcoin has changed pretty substantially. And I like to think that, kind of every few years, we actually take another collective stab at trying to understand what Bitcoin is. But because Bitcoin is an invention and because it makes real something that was previously impossible, right? When you think about an invention, you have to think about something like flight, right? It was impossible to fly and then man flew, right? So it actually invalidates some previously true thing about the world. And here it's, prior to Bitcoin, we needed a government to have a financial system, a large scale digital financial system. After Bitcoin, we no longer need that. And so for the last 10 years, we've been watching, people around the world kind of pile drive into this question, seeking riches, fortune, fame, all sorts of things. But ultimately, I like to think that we're progressing towards an understanding of Bitcoin that is meaningful. I would like to think that, but periodically, it seems we have these bubbles that kind of form and materialize, and we get a very specific idea, and we think we've figured out Bitcoin, and then it'll change, and it'll do something else, and we'll learn something new about it. So I like to engage people and talk about, it's a learning process, right? I like to think we're still discovering things about Bitcoin. Obviously, there are things we have learned that we can say, 100% are factually, we think pretty true. But look, there's a lot of unknowns, right? I mean, and the people like to say it's still early. It is still early. There's a lot that we don't know about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies broadly. I would say, how they work or don't work and why they work or don't work. So yeah, there's a lot to dig in there.
Thank you for that answer, Pete. And before I get to the second question, I have a little like tidbit that you may not know about me. You
Oh yeah.
had, because you do so much in the space, of course, you're an editor for Bitcoin Mag, you do a bunch of things.
Mm,
At this time, you were really heavily searching information about Satoshi,
mm,
and I'll never forget there was a researcher position that you had threw out there to get
mm.
like more information around Satoshi, like the
Oh,
forums,
okay.
Bitcoin forums. Yeah. So I did that research, and that
Uh-huh.
actually helped me to formulate not only this
Oh
episode
wow.
but other articles. So like, thank you for that because I was able to
Wild.
go back and see all those old conversations Satoshi
Mm-hmm.
had, and I was like, yeah, Pete knows what he's doing. He's really like digging into the research of this. So like that
Yeah,
was
I
cool.
wish we would have hired for that position. It was a great position, but
Yeah,
unfortunately, the bear market, you gotta focus on the fundamentals.
most definitely. So Pete, Satoshi Nakamoto, of course, his or her or they identity remains a mystery to this
Mm,
day, of course. Could you share any insights or theories you've explored during your study of Satoshi Nakamoto's origins?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, that's the big mystery, right? Is people want to understand who Satoshi is, because usually when someone invents something, right, it is a human excellence, right? Like someone has achieved a degree of mastery over a subject in order to invent something, right? You have to have that level, right? So I think I always go back to what is the fascination of Satoshi, and the fascination of Satoshi is the inventor, and so we want to understand him in order to understand his invention. So, I think a lot of people have had different approaches to this, right? Some people have tried to like dig into Satoshi, like find his internet footprint. Unfortunately, they've been foiled. One of the things we've learned about Satoshi is that in addition to, being, light years ahead of everyone in understanding money and financial systems, she, as you said, had a master's degree in online privacy, and really, I think it's not, really impressed enough just how much effort they put into essentially disguising their online profile, despite the kind of internet's wizards, being on the lookout for him for forever. We know that he.
But the main reason I'm here is to clear my name that I have nothing to do with Bitcoin, nothing to do with developing. I was just an engineer doing something else.
Used Tor, that he, had a privacy, was totally private on the internet. He, when registering the Bitcoin domain, he like paid in cash in order to get the domain registrar, right? So this is a person who took precaution of his identity seriously. So because we can't know who Satoshi is because of that, we're forced to actually kind of look at his writing, right? And that's actually one of the things that I've been able to contribute to my work. Really, I think is like kind of the first pretty substantial look at, okay, what did Satoshi write? What did he actually leave behind, and what can we learn from him? One of them is that he identified as a he, so that's why I'm using the him pronoun here. But yeah, we can go through this archive and we can see how Satoshi made decisions. He also was the leader of the Bitcoin project for the better part of a couple of years, including for 8 or 9 months when really nobody was using Bitcoin, right? So not only did he have to invent something, but he had to go forth and evangelize for it and actually get public interest in Bitcoin, which I think is a really funny aspect about Satoshi, because you think if you were to invent something, that's kind of it, right? You've achieved something great, but no, it's not enough. It wasn't enough to do that because Bitcoin is a peer to peer network. It requires people using it as money. So Satoshi had to sort of go forth and do that. And I think from the way he launched and ran the project, we can learn a lot about him. That he was someone who, for all he knew and for all the vision that he had, really right in understanding that, financial systems, the perils of inflation, having an alternative that could work in a digital setting. He understood all that. There were things that he didn't quite know, right? And some of them are, how would Bitcoin scale to handle potentially billions of users? How would Bitcoin, be run and governed without a leader, right? So if Bitcoin was a non-government currency, if there was no government running it, well, how would the software of Bitcoin be maintained? So Satoshi does sort of leave these unanswered questions that I think are actually really interesting and like worth exploring, right? Because I don't know. So if Satoshi really completes the Bitcoin project as we know it today, right? He leaves kind of these little interesting edge cases, and so for me, like that's kind of what, as someone who I want to understand the history, but I'm not really out to just like find who Satoshi is as a kind of a got you. It's like I want to understand where he was coming from and then what he left us with, and then what we've learned about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has evolved since Satoshi came. I think there was a tweet yesterday, something like 0.06% of the code that's left is still Satoshi's, right? It's been rewritten by other developers. So this is something that was birthed into the world, and it's run by an open source contributor base. And we have added to the learning about Bitcoin, right? So Satoshi kind of started the project, but didn't complete it. We're completing it, and I like to think that I don't know that it's complete yet. I think there are some things we might still learn, in the years ahead.
Most definitely. And that reminds me as well of this new AI project they have out called Spirit of Satoshi. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with it,
No,
but
I've
like something
actually,
like that.
yeah, very interesting project. They're trying to train an AI to, answer kind of Bitcoin questions as an alternative to Chat GPT. I've actually been working kind of in the Telegram groups. I've been asked to kind of donate some of my writings that I think are interesting. Yeah, fascinating project. I think it'll be interesting. Can you train an AI to understand Bitcoin?
Yeah, and I think that will help it kind of create this time capsule around Bitcoin too, because years down the road when people want to find Satoshi's insight, God forbid the information gets wiped or lost in transition, you'll have other protocols out there that could actually help have people learn about Satoshi. So
Yeah, for sure. And the digital archive, that we have for Satoshi is something that we should absolutely preserve. So yeah, I love that project. Really want to see that one succeed. Whether it's going to answer questions like Satoshi, I don't know, but it certainly will give me good summaries of Michael Saylor podcast. So we'll start there.
yes. So Pete, I want to talk about Bitcoin Magazine. I've written for them. You know, they've just been such a prominent fixture inside of this ecosystem for so long. And shout out to Bitcoin Magazine, of course. How do you approach covering the ever evolving landscape of Bitcoin? And are there any specific criteria or principles you follow to ensure accurate and unbiased reporting?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Bitcoin Magazine is foremost a cultural publication, right? So I think in contrast to a lot of the other kind of like cryptocurrency media out there that are trying to break news, they're trying to be maybe a bit more objective. We can kind of get into the pros and cons of that. Bitcoin Magazine really is a cultural destination. It's a place for, the Bitcoin community to come together. And I think the approach we've really taken is that Bitcoin Magazine is a commons. It's a place where everyone from the mightiest kind of podcast influencer to the pleb can have their voices heard, essentially, right? If you have something that you're passionate about, you can write about it and we'll publish it. So we take a pretty loose, or I guess would say expansive kind of definition on this, right? We've had a lot of contributors, yourself included. We really optimize for diversity of opinion, right? So if somebody's passionate about an opinion and they have something about Bitcoin, we'll publish it. I mean, there's opinion pieces on Bitcoin Magazine that I don't necessarily agree with, right? But that's I don't think that's our role really to say what's good or bad for Bitcoin, right? Our role is to basically, be the curators. And I think we've been challenged on this recently. It's been interesting. I'm sure you've seen what's happened with the ordinals protocol and things like that. Our default view, I think, at this point is that look, if you're operating within consensus rules, you're not scamming anybody. You're actually, there's consensual economic activity that you're engaging in. It's not for us to kind of gatekeep those definitions. So we tend to be a bit more open for this conversation, as I said, right? So, the Bitcoin Magazine conference or Bitcoin conference this year was, interesting. It was a battleground of some of those ideas. There were some people, who are going out and they have totally different viewpoints on what Bitcoin is, right? I think your Saifedean Ammous and the Bitcoin Standard crowd, staunch kind of monetary maximalists, really sees Bitcoin as sound money for the world. And then you have your wizards, your taproot wizards, who they think that yeah, sound money is great, but hey, there's a bunch of kids storing art on different blockchains, so let's get them energized around Bitcoin. So again, we are a platform for opinions, right? At the end of the day, that's what I would say, right? And I think my aspiration would be that if there is a dialogue happening in the Bitcoin community, that's reflected on Bitcoin Magazine. I don't think it's our place to really kind of come down on one side or the other. People kind of saying like, oh, you know, this is spam, or this is that, or you shouldn't allow that. I mean, look, there are lines and editorial divisions will make. We've chosen not to cover the kind of emerging Bitcoin token space. So I think we're open to covering Bitcoin token protocols, right? So if you're launching a standard for tokens or something like that, we've covered Taproot assets. We've covered things like Cashew and eCash that are coming out, which I would say kind of all class in that similar category where they're trying to kind of build top layer economic systems on top of Bitcoin. But we're not going to cover the latest BRC token because I don't think many of us think very highly of that standard. But B, it's like we don't really want to. We think that we'll build on Bitcoin and we'll provide value to the Bitcoins that people use, right? We think that that is one of the things that really actually distinguished the ordinals protocol, right? At the end of the day, it didn't have a token. It actually was providing economic value to the Bitcoin chain, the Bitcoin miners, to the Bitcoin users. You can argue with the design. There's a lot of pros and cons. I've spent a lot of time arguing with people about it, but ultimately, I don't think we want to shy away from that or be draconian and coming to some view because I think the marketplace will play that out.
Speaking on that front about being very careful about what is actually issued in the publication, you can see like the big noise around XRP right now in regulation. And how do you see like regulatory landscape changing surrounding Bitcoin because of the XRP case? And do you think that it impacts it at all, or it has nothing to do with Bitcoin?
Well, I think everything in cryptocurrency affects everything else, because I always go back to, what is the cryptocurrency ecosystem? Like, the whole cryptocurrency ecosystem exists on the claim that Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto's invention, either needs to be extended, improved, or replaced. At the end of the day, any other cryptocurrency is trying to do one of those three things. They're trying to replace Bitcoin, extend Bitcoin, or improve Bitcoin. So because all cryptocurrency projects are doing one of those three things, they're fundamentally related to Bitcoin, right? They're making some claim about Satoshi's invention. So I think you do have to treat all of these things as one class, right? That is one group of creations, though they're not all equal. So I think, in regards to XRP, I think there's a decent sized coalition within the Bitcoin community that really wants the U.S. Legal apparatus to declare cryptocurrencies securities. And I think there's a lot of there's a lot of actually good reasons why you might want that, where that might be a sensible thing for the U.S. government, whose job is to essentially weigh the risk of like marketplace activity. They might want to come to that conclusion. So I think the XRP lawsuit that you're talking about, the SEC sued Ripple, which is the kind of startup company formed around the XRP. There's a whole lineage of like strange information around that. But essentially, a group of programmers, they created a software that had a cryptocurrency, and then they made a company that then was gifted that cryptocurrency, and then they gave that cryptocurrency to people and then they distributed, right? Ripple was an interesting experiment in the cryptocurrency world, because it happened really early on. It was in 2013. It had all these interesting characteristics. A lot of people didn't think it was going to go anywhere. I mean, I think we've seen that it hasn't really gone anywhere. But yeah, I think the XRP case was interesting because, in a lot of respects, people felt it was a strong case where like a company and a cryptocurrency were pretty synonymous, and that if there was going to be an issue, a coin that the U.S. regulators really cracked down on, it would be XRP. I have a couple qualms with that because, again, like Ripple was so early that they didn't do any of this kind of ICO stuff that some of the later projects did, so they're actually a little bit outside of that. But I thought the big takeaway from that is the legal language around it was, and it'll be interesting to see if this holds up in court. But essentially, if you really read the ruling, what the court decided was that the people who issued XRP, the coders didn't issue the money. What happened was that the software issued the money. You've actually read this. This is actually real. This is real. You can go into the documents and read it. What they said is that the XRP software, which issued the 100 million XRP. So in the current legal view, you, the coder who writes the software for the cryptocurrency, you are not issuing the cryptocurrency. It's the software itself that's doing that, and that I think is just kind of mind blowing, because I think it gets into it sidesteps a lot of the interesting questions about okay, well, if you are writing a cryptocurrency software, are you issuing the currency? Because you can argue that Satoshi Nakamoto didn't actually issue any of the currency. What proof of work did, and why Bitcoin was an invention, why Bitcoins became money, is because it found a way to incentivize people to do a costly form of work. This is proof of work. Maybe I'm explaining this. Maybe people know this. And it caused that data to be valued as money. But in the end of the day, the end users of the software were the ones who were creating the new money, right? Satoshi Nakamoto didn't actually issue that. So I don't know. I view the XRP case as one that the conclusion is really baffling. It's very baffling. Don't understand it at all. And very weird, and pretty much just opens up the case for like, if Ripple is not a security, if XRP is not a security, then like basically nothing is at this point. But then it sidesteps all the really interesting questions about cryptocurrency developers and the differences between cryptocurrencies, and I think that's pretty unfortunate, because I think that Bitcoin mining and proof of work, like there's a really elegant system. It takes a long time to really understand the problem that it solved. Ripple didn't solve that problem, like XRP didn't, which is why they had to give all the cryptocurrency to themselves. So you can kind of see just inherently these are not kind of like equal inventions there. But yeah, I think it's a big blow for the people who think that Bitcoin is going to sort of win by some sort of regulatory enforcement. And I do sort of agree with the crowd of Bitcoiners who are saying, we shouldn't concern ourselves with the actions of government. Bitcoin is going to have to compete in the open market versus everything else. And look, at the end of the day, if you think Bitcoin is the best form of money, I don't know why that bothers you, because it should just be obvious to you that Bitcoin is the best form of money and that people can just trade and buy and sell whatever other things they want, and then just over time they'll just realize that that's not as good as Bitcoin, and they'll just move along, right? Like that's the ideal. That's a preferable scenario to the government just like confiscating a bunch of money from people, I think. But we'll see what happens.
Which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay, what's the second best? There is no second best. There's no second best crypto asset. There's a crypto asset. It's called Bitcoin, right? Right? There's no second best. Okay. But take all your money, buy Bitcoin, then take all your time, figure out how to borrow more money to buy more Bitcoin, then take all your time and figure out what you can sell to buy Bitcoin. And if you absolutely love the thing that you don't want to sell it, go mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin with it. And if you've got a business that you love because your family works for the business, it's in your family for 37 years, and you can't bear to sell it, mortgage it, finance it, and convert the proceeds into the hardest money on earth, which is Bitcoin.
This channel is for education purposes only and is not affiliated with any financial institution. This is not financial advice. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you, Pete. And that kind of crushes the narrative that people have about Bitcoin versus cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin, no crypto. Like there's a lot of back and forth going on, and we're still so early, and we still don't really know how the government entities will kind of treat this protocol. And of course, I'm a Bitcoiner first, and I want Bitcoin to win, but it is a competitive market. It's an open market, and these protocols are just going to it's going to be like, let the best man win, or the best protocol win. And I personally think Bitcoin will do so, but XRP definitely threw a monkey wrench into the fray here with the way that we approach these digital assets and how people can invest in them.
Yeah, I think at the very least, what you're going to see is you're going to see a renewed push by the cryptocurrency industry in the US to fight back against the SEC. I think it really was a big blow for the SEC. I think for Bitcoiners, I mean, at the end of the day, we have to further the adoption of Bitcoin and increase demand for Bitcoin. And that's really should be our focus. I think the more we're focused on things that are not that, just it's not productive. Like it's not productive to be debating like securities laws with people. Like I don't know why you would want to do that, or what you think the benefit of it is. At the end of the day, it's like Bitcoin has to solve problems for people or be used by people, or they should use something else, right? Like a good example is the recent kind of stablecoin controversy, where people are sort of upset that people in like inflation ravaged environments, or developing countries, like they're using stablecoins over other networks, like whether it's Ethereum or Tron, and they are doing that. I went to Lebanon myself. I talked with the local Bitcoiners there. This is how they buy Bitcoin. They are effectively unbanked. They have no banks, so they go to a local broker who can cash deal, give them access to stablecoins, and then they buy Bitcoin. Like that's what they do. So I think that I hope that the larger Bitcoin community will start engaging with some of these things, because just because you want to believe a certain narrative like doesn't mean that it's true, right? I think that right now stablecoins are as important as Bitcoin in terms of like actually preserving the wealth of people as the end users. So I think the question for people in Bitcoin is, do we want to disrupt that? Do we want to be a competitor in that market, or what's the strategy, right? Because if we can't call that a scam. It is not a scam. Those people are using a technology that is actually helping them, and that is not Bitcoin. Maybe doesn't need the Tron network to function, but that's currently how it works. So, if you don't have a better solution, what right do you have to complain about it, is essentially, the way that I would look at it. I would like to see the Bitcoin community try to outcompete those, inadequate solutions. I think we've seen some people who want to do stablecoins over Lightning, stablecoins on Bitcoin. I would love to see a resurgence in that personally. I think it would be a worthwhile activity, because look, at the end of the day, I don't think we want people holding value on something like the Tron network. We just know that it's a very brittle cryptocurrency system. I mean, it's run by like 32 people, most of whom are Justin Sun. I mean, it's just, we shouldn't want that, but that is the status quo, right? So you have to accept reality at some point. And so I would like the Bitcoin community to kind of like call to arms, let's go out and solve the problem. But you have to recognize that there is a problem first. And I think that's the discussion that's happening now is I think there's still some reticence to really accept that, some other cryptocurrency networks are serving useful functions for people.
Awesome, awesome, man. Last question for you, Pete. So, is there any advantages or milestones you believe will have significant impact on Bitcoin's future and its position within the broader financial ecosystem? You kind of answered that a little bit, but just your personal take outside of what we're seeing with the different cryptocurrencies, just your Bitcoin insight that you've gained over all these years.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's on Bitcoin's side is time. I think time will be the biggest champion of Bitcoin. I think time has been the biggest champion of Bitcoin for myself personally and many others. The natural first reaction to people who discover Bitcoin is to doubt it and to say that, it's not real, it won't work, it'll go to zero. And the more people who see that, and the more people who touch cryptocurrency, who use it and who use Bitcoin, they actually can send it back and forth to someone or use other cryptocurrencies and see that Bitcoin is a better solution. I mean, I think that was one of the cool things for me about, the ordinals craze earlier this year is that you had NFT script kiddies downloading Lightning and saying, wow, this is just as good as, Solana or whatever, like, sort of VC mined coin they were using before, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see it play out, but I think time is on Bitcoin's side. I think that there are a lot of questions that we have to answer about Bitcoin. I think that hopefully this bear market will get some more energy. But I think, look, the hardest time in Bitcoin is really, I think, your second cycle, right? I think we see is that, Bitcoin has a programmatic scarcity. It's what's going to happen is there are going to be supply shocks. Price is going to go up over time. That's the trend. That's what's happened. But there's been a huge tendency in the community to equate our understanding of Bitcoin with those price increases, right? We are the reason that this is happening. When I'm not really so sure about that. I expect Bitcoin to go up in price about every 4 years. I expect over time that most cryptocurrencies will fail, and that the longer people spend using those cryptocurrencies, the more likely they'll be to adopt Bitcoin. And I think that will be the case for some time. I don't think that there's going to be, kind of a dramatic go to zero moment for the crypto community. I think that Bitcoin will persevere. It will keep going up. We'll keep learning about it. And I think that, hopefully, we can get people to using Bitcoin before there is some cataclysmic event, because we know that the current financial system is so rigid and has all these problems. And it would be nice to think that Bitcoin will be a better solution for people, right? That people will use Bitcoin in the same way we use the internet right now, right? Where it's like we're having this conversation, you're in your room, I'm in my room, we're coming together, we're sharing knowledge. This was completely impossible before, right? These are the kind of things I think we have to get to with Bitcoin, right? And we have to keep building towards. So,
Yeah, Pete, I couldn't agree more. Like, I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. Your extensive experience as a journalist and editor has been super valuable in this ecosystem, and I just thank you for your continued contributions. Um, Once again, thank you for being on the Bitcoin Source podcast. I hope to have you on again as a guest at some point.
yeah.
Once again, thank you, Pete Rizzo. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, if anybody wants to give me a follow on Twitter, at Pete_Rizzo, we do a little history every day. So if you're new and you need to catch up, I'd love to be your resource. So Dawdu, appreciate it, man. Happy to be on anytime.
Thank you.